Hi everyone, I'm your host Miles. Welcome to X-Raised, where knowledge meets inspiration in the intricate dance of industry evolution. Whether you're tuning in via video or lending us your ears on Spotify or Amazon Music, thank you for being with us and for bringing your brain along, because you're in for a good one today. In this episode, we'll kick off a four-part series that dives into a question that's been haunting courtroom corridors and tech think tanks alike. Are we heading toward a world without lawyers? Spoiler alert, no, we're not. But before the bots celebrate, let me introduce someone whose insight might just shift your entire perspective on law, tech, and what makes the humankind irreplaceable in the justice system. Our guest today is someone who doesn't just practice law, but thinks deeply about what it means. She's walked the halls of justice and also seen how AI is creeping into legal decision making. And rather than panic, she's chosen to question, strategize, and prepare. She brings a unique lens that blends legal expertise with social intelligence, highlighting the nuances that no algorithm can truly grasp: empathy, ethics, perception, and that all too human knack for reading between the lines. She's the kind of legal mind that reminds us that law isn't just about logic, it's about people. So here's the ever thoughtful, ever insightful co founder and CEO of MiAI Law, Laina Chan. Hi, Laina, welcome back.
Hi, Miles. It's always good to see you. You make me think so hard.
I'm sorry, but not sorry. Well, thank you for being here, Lena. I know you've been so busy. I'm thrilled we're starting this series with you because before we even tackle whether AI will actually replace lawyers, we need to understand why the legal profession is so uniquely, well, human. So, our conversation today will revolve around the vision why law will always need humans. So, let's jump right into it. I want to begin with a shift in mindset. In the AI era, lawyers aren't just information hunters anymore. There are a lot of platforms that can do that in seconds. But how do you see the lawyer's role evolving from being a finder of information to a synthesizer of meaning?
Okay. Well, a lawyer's role has never just been about the finding of information. Never. It's never been like that. We look for information so that we can synthesize it, so that we can use that information to come up with strategies to give the clients the results that they want.
Mhm.
So our job is not just to go out there and hunt and find facts. It never has been. And you might use the paralegals as you become more senior. You might use your paralegals and your junior lawyers or junior counsel to help you find the information. But the job of a lawyer, an experienced one, is to then take all those facts, synthesize those facts, and see how it can lead to the outcome that the clients are looking for. And the difference with AI is that now that step can hopefully be done faster. And so
Mhm.
that more time can then be spent on the synthesizing and the strategizing.
Mm. Well, thanks for clarifying that, Lena. That's a powerful shift, moving from gathering to interpreting, from facts to meaning. And basically, AI can hand you maybe 100 pieces of a puzzle, but only a lawyer knows what picture it's supposed to create. Now, let's talk about those invisible layers of legal work: emotions, context, relationships. In a world increasingly driven by data, Lena, how important is a lawyer's ability to read between the lines, socially, emotionally, and strategically?
Well, I think that actually comes down most importantly to maybe not doing the work, but in getting the clients. Because getting the clients has always been about relationships and referrals, and it comes down to, well, as I said, the relationships, how you form a connection with your client and whether they feel that you can empathize
Connected.
with their problem. Yes, empathize with their problem and feel that you're really fighting for them and really feel like you are committed to their cause. You
Mhm.
always have to remain objective, but you do have to have some kind of empathy so that they feel that you care.
Yeah.
And it's not just, not just another matter, not just money to you,
Uh-huh.
the money from them. I feel that they just have to feel a connection with you. And then from that, you will get, if you do a good job, you'll get referrals, etc. And so I think the empathy comes in there, most importantly, and being able to form trust and trust in your relationships with your clients. I don't do I don't do criminal law and I don't do family law, so all my cases are about money.
Okay.
But yeah,
Correct.
so but still, even then, in mediations, etc., in order to be successful at mediations, and whether you're acting as a mediator or whether or not you're acting as one of the counsel in the mediation, to be truly good at it and to be truly able to reach a mediated outcome, you need to be able to read the emotions in the room. You need to be able to work out what is really motivating the parties, because sometimes it's not about the money. Sometimes it could be because one party feels cheated by the other party. So you
Uh-huh.
need to be able to read between the lines, read the emotion, and then you have to address those elephants in the room
Uh-huh.
first before you can get on with the business of arguing about the money and trying to work out a settlement in terms of dollar terms that is
Yeah.
acceptable to both parties. But often the parties will not get to that point until you have worked out what is really at the heart of the problem between the parties. And I have found in my commercial cases, it's often because one party feels cheated by the other party, or hard done by, or in some way, they feel that they just haven't been treated right. And so you have to address that.
Yeah, it's a deeper level, and data might tell you what really happened, but I think only human intuition tells you why it matters. So,
That's
mhm,
I mean, that's right. That's right. I mean, the
mhm.
data can tell you what happened, but not why it happened.
Yeah. And here's a curveball, Lena. We often think of human error as a liability, but let's try to flip that. Where do you think human fallibility actually adds value in law, where imperfection or doubt sharpens legal thinking?
I was thinking about this question. I think it's because when I'm working on a matter, sometimes I get a niggling thought in my head
Mhm.
that I say, you haven't thought about this point, or you haven't checked a certain point. And then I know that if I don't do that, then it leads to disaster. And so it's your human intuition when you're doing your research, when you're going through the facts of everything, that you feel, oh, there's just one point I haven't addressed yet. There's one point I haven't thought about. And then you really have to always listen to yourself and go back and check it. And if you haven't checked it, then it's because, well, you've missed a point, and you haven't listened
Yeah.
to yourself. So I
Mhm.
think it's really important. I have found over the years that you must always listen to that voice in the back of your head that says,
Uh-huh.
hey, don't forget to check that. Hey, don't forget to check this point, whatever, because you can be guaranteed that if you don't check it, you go to court, it'll be the one question the judges ask you about that you don't have
Mhm.
an answer to.
Yeah, it makes sense. And there's something beautifully paradoxical about that doubt leading to deeper diligence, Lena. I mean, machines might be consistent, but humans questions themselves. And in law, that can be the birth of genius, or at least really strong closing arguments in this case.
Do you think
And
so? Do you
mhm,
think so? Well, I can tell you, I know this is a bit off the beaten path,
uh-huh,
but in the last week, we have been testing our
yeah.
case summarization module. And I tested it on Australian judgments, and it worked. I mean, by the end of the week, it is working really well.
Mhm,
But one of my advisors was trained in Indian law. He was the editor of the Indian Arbitration Journal, etc. And he'd been saying to me that it's really hard to summarize an Indian case properly using AI,
uh,
because it rambles. There's no clear signposting when the judges move from one issue to the next.
mhm,
And so an AI, which doesn't actually understand anything it's reading, but is going on patterns and
yeah.
probabilities and predictions,
Mhm,
is why you cannot rely on AI.
mhm,
So we were testing. So I asked him to give me a Supreme Court judgment, which was structured in that way, just kind of conversational, just flowed. It just
Mm-hmm.
went from one thought to another. And it's an important case on arbitration.
Okay.
And it was a decision of the Supreme Court delivered by one judge for the whole court. And the issue was whether or not a domestic arbitration should be set aside. And the
Mm-hmm.
parties had put on arguments and relied on a particular section of the Indian Arbitration Act. That's not the right name of it, but it's one of the arbitration acts. They were
Uh-huh.
all relying upon Article 34. One party was saying it did apply, the other one said it didn't apply. And the judge went through and right at the beginning of the judgment said, oh, I think Article 34 doesn't apply because I think it doesn't apply to domestic arbitrations. The detail doesn't really matter. But
Okay.
he said that. But then he went on for the next 30 or more pages talking about Article 34 and the circumstances in which it would apply, even though he had only said in one sentence right at the top that it doesn't apply. Then, right at the end of the judgment, when he had gone through all the scenarios in which Article 34, if it applied, what it would apply to, the circumstances in which it would apply, where you could rely upon it to set aside an award. He started the third last paragraph, I think, where the finding was, and he talked about whether Article 34 would apply in a particular circumstances. Well, but he'd already said only once in the judgment up top that it doesn't apply to the circumstances of that particular case. Then buried in the middle of the paragraph, he said, but I'm going to rely upon, I think, Article 142 to set aside the award. And
Okay.
so the AI it could not summarize that case properly. It summarized the arguments, etc., but then it said that the award had been set aside on the basis of Article 34.
Mm-hmm.
And you, the way to interact with AI is that you have to talk to it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's a back and forward iteration. So I said to it, told the AI that I was using to test my case summarization, I
Yeah.
told it that the correct answer is that it was actually set aside by Article 142. And
Mm-hmm.
why? Why hadn't you picked it up? And then the AI said to me, it said, well, the judge only said in one sentence that Article 34 didn't apply, but
It
then
missed
basically
it.
it said, but the judge only said once that it didn't apply. But then he talked for over 30 pages about when it would apply, and
Uh-huh.
then buried the answer as to what he was really relying upon to set aside the award in the middle of a paragraph.
Uh-huh.
So if you're a human being who have decided wrongly that you should be just relying upon
The responses of AI.
the responses, then you would fall into error.
Yeah.
And I keep everyone should know, but they don't because lawyers are getting into trouble by just relying upon the AI without checking.
Uh,
But really, they're just being lazy because I think everyone knows that AI is hallucinating, right? It's
yes.
making mistakes, etc.
Predictions.
Because AI doesn't really understand. And as I said before, it's just predictions, probabilities, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So the doubt in your mind when you are using AI should be, is it 100% accurate? Or has there be some error in there? And should
Mm-hmm.
I check it? And if you ignore that doubt, you should have a doubt as to whether or not the AI is accurate simply because of the way AI
Mm-hmm.
operates. If you ignore that doubt, then you'll
You know
fall
what?
into error. But if you
Uh,
don't ignore that doubt, and you shouldn't, because that's how you properly should be using AI, then
mm,
you will you will go and you look through the judgment, check through the summarization, which is cross-referenced to with paragraph numbers,
mm-hmm.
etc. And then you will find, oh my goodness, buried way in the middle of the third last paragraph is the real reason for the finding.
Yeah.
And so
That's why
I,
it's very
yeah.
important to check it. I mean, a human has to check it.
A human has to check it
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, I've come up with methods now to find uh, ratios, which is the principle of the case that's buried in the middle of a paragraph. But still, you still shouldn't be trusting us 100%.
Of
You
course. Yeah.
shouldn't because of the nature of AI. And so
Mm-hmm.
people should, when they're using AI, should never, ever just ignore the doubt that
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's not 100% accurate.
Right. And since you mentioned that, Lena, let's take this into something AI still can't replicate feeling. How does the human experience of suffering, compassion, or even outrage influence legal arguments in ways that AI simply or obviously can touch?
I don't know if those feelings actually help you. The beauty of being a barrister, a counsel, is
Mhm,
that you're one step removed from the client. So the client has deals with the instructing solicitor, and then I am the counsel. And what's good about being the counsel is I'm not so close to the client. And so the client is the
yeah.
one who feels all these feelings, right?
Mhm,
But it doesn't help me when I'm crafting an argument to be burdened by all of those feelings, emotions, etc. I need to be clinical about it. And so that's why it's good to have the instructing solicitor who is the one who has to deal with the client and all their emotions, etc. Whereas I can remain objective because I don't
mhm.
think having those emotions actually helps me in being objective.
Uh-huh. Okay. So when it comes to, say, mediation, family law, or maybe criminal defense, they still require someone who feels, right?
I mean, you have to feel it. You can feel
Mm-hmm.
it, but you have to disengage it from your legal arguments. You still have to be clinical in exercising your judgment as to which arguments to run, which arguments not to run,
Uh-huh.
which is the best facts to focus on, which are the
Yeah.
best legal arguments to focus on. And those judgments should be made clinically without emotion clouding your judgment. Do you understand?
Right, right, right. You're right. I get it.
Yeah, but when we are in mediations, we're not letting those emotions cloud us, but we're using it to understand the interests of the parties, what is really motivating them, so that we look at them being upset, but then we're trying to work out what is really making them upset.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Right.
sometimes when people say they're upset about B, that's
Uh-huh.
not really the reason why they're upset. There's some underlying reason as to what is really upsetting them. And
Yeah.
the job of a good mediator or counsel who's doing mediation is to go below the emotions to find out the real cause. So
Mm-hmm.
those things are useful when you're doing mediations, but it's not really useful, I don't think,
I,
when we're doing legal argument because that's not what we're trying to do there. We're trying to look at all the facts clinically
mm-hmm.
and then look at all the legal principles that might apply, the outcome that the client wants, and then work out the best way to frame the argument to get the clients the outcome they want. And I don't think emotion comes into that.
Yeah.
And if emotion does come into it, it might cloud your objectivity and be counterproductive.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to intervene. I am.
No.
Now, Lena, let's end this with the next generation. In your vision, how should future lawyers be trained, not just to use AI, but to sharpen their own human judgment alongside it? I mean, how do we keep the soul of law alive in the tech age?
This is the question I've been thinking about for the last year. And I was at business school in March.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the program, which is Leading New Ventures, the professor said to me, "So no more lawyers, huh?" And I said to him, "No, no, no, that's not what the aim of all of this is, right? Is to help lawyers become more productive. But I
Yeah.
really don't know what law schools should be doing to get their law students ready for the workforce."
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the what has to shift is that the law students will have to be taught how to use AI effectively. And then from there, they have to be taught still how to think critically because you cannot master a craft if you haven't spent the time thinking deeply.
Yeah. And
So
practicing.
yes, but before that, when you're still a student, I
Mm-hmm.
spent a lot of time reading cases. I had to read cases and then I had to work out what the cases meant. And when I was at law school, I used to read the whole case, like all of it, and but a lot of it wasn't relevant. And I read all of it. And I don't know if I really needed to do that or if I needed to have AI like my AI, go
Uh-huh.
through and summarize the case. And our case summarization summarizes the parties, the arguments that were put forward by each party, the key issues in the case, and then the reasoning by each judge. It's all split up with cross references, etc., to the
Okay.
paragraphs. Maybe that's all I really needed for that, and then to then go back to the core judgment and then to look at all those things, what the
Mhm.
judge had actually, the critical things of what the judge said, stripped out from all the irrelevant stuff.
Mhm.
And maybe that's all I really needed to do. Maybe I wasted my time in reading all the other stuff. You know, sometimes when you're reading 100-page judgment,
Uh-huh.
maybe only what's in there for 20 pages might be relevant. I don't, and what my AI does is it focuses the mind on what is relevant.
Relevant. Uh-huh.
And then you still have to look at it deeply to understand the reasoning and to understand the process, to understand how the judge went from the facts
Mm-hmm.
to the conclusion. You still need to understand that.
Yeah. So it
But
like
I don't know whether it's necessary for you to read the 80 pages.
so it
I don't really
filters it.
know. It
A
filters it.
filter.
But then
Mm-hmm.
the problem is, if you do that, right? If you're relying upon AI, and I think AI is here to stay, you will lose your ability, I think, to read the whole case by yourself and then work out by yourself which bits are important.
Mm-hmm. Well, makes
I
sense.
think it
Mm-hmm.
will, won't it? Because the AI will have done that step for you.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Right.
And then the question is, how important is it for a lawyer to have that skill to go from a full judgment and to be able to distill all the critical elements out of it so that you can do the analysis? Maybe it's not that important. I mean, it's a skill that you build up over many, many, many years of reading cases so
Mm-hmm.
that you can take the whole judgment and from it extract the key elements. And then from that, I do my analysis and then I can develop my legal arguments, etc. What I'm always looking for are those core elements. But AI will help me distill that. Then I still have
Mm-hmm.
to go back to the case.
Yeah.
So I think the law schools are going to have to spend more time getting the students actually ready for work. And maybe the answer is to go back to when we had article clerks so that you work full time and then you
Mm-hmm.
do your law part time because you really need to be taught how to think and act like a lawyer before you finish your law school so that you are actually useful because maybe a lot of the low level jobs that lawyers
And
typically used to do when they came out of law school was to be that, the fact finder, to summarize the cases, etc. And then they would build their way up to getting more strategic work. But I think now law students are going to have to come out more ready to do the strategic work. And it is the job of the law schools to teach them how to do that.
mm-hmm. And so
And
they can be, yeah, they're prepared more to
yes.
integrate AI in their workflow.
Well, they already integrated, but then they have to be ready to start doing the higher level work.
I see. Well, what a fascinating conversation, Lena. And quite frankly, what a perfect reminder that while AI might offer tools, humans still hold the compass, obviously, from reframing fallibility as a strength to recognizing how compassion influences strategy. Our chat today, Lena, showed us that law isn't just about logic, it's about life and people. And that's something only humans can fully understand. So, Lena, thank you so much for kicking off our World Without Lawyers series with clarity, insight, and that all important human touch. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Miles.
I'll definitely see you in the second part of this series.
See you soon.
Yes, thank you. If you, dear viewers and listeners, want to explore about MiAI Law, better go to miai.law or click the link below. And if you're a law practitioner or just curious about this topic, connect with Lena on LinkedIn because she's one voice in the legal space worth following. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, keep questioning, keep listening, and remember, in a world of bots, it's the human brain that wins the case. Lena and I will see you again soon. This has been your host, Miles. Stay focused and inspired with X Raised.